I work at a toll booth in Alaska, and I've witnessed unimaginable horrors lurking in the snow. I never should have opened that door. The chill hit me like an icy fist, tightening around my chest. It was supposed to be a quiet night, just me and the endless stretch of white. Instead, dread crawled up my spine. Every evening followed the same boring pattern. I de-sip cold coffee, listen to the radio crackling static, and watch the snow fall silently. But something changed that night. The shadows danced differently, flickering like whispers. I felt the atmosphere shift, thickening with an impending storm of fear. The toll booth sat lonely on the highway, surrounded by towering pines swallowed by darkness. The wind howled, an eerie melody that sent shivers down my arms. I glanced out the small window, my heart racing. The snow-blanketed landscape felt alive, as if it breathed with malicious intent. I strained to hear over the wind. Strange noises echoed through the air, distant yet close enough to send chills down my spine. Then it happened. A soft thump. My eyes snapped to the door that led outside. Was there something there? I could feel my throat tighten, the hairs on my arms standing tall. I took a deep breath, though it felt like ice in my lungs. The darkness seemed to thicken around me. I could almost see shadows flitting about, just out of my line of sight. That a flash caught my eye, a shape, brief, yet unmistakable. Panic surged as I stood, instinctively moving toward the door. Cold air spilled into the booth, making the world outside feel even darker, more foreboding. I paused, fighting against the instinct to turn and run. Something whispered my name, swirling in the icy wind. My heart pounded. The wind howled louder, almost mocking me as I reached for the handle. I hesitated, breath catching in my throat. Was I ready to face whatever lay beyond? As if in answer, the sound returned, closer now, rustling, shifting. Then, the shadows moved again, gliding too quickly for me to comprehend that I was frozen, trapped between the door and whatever horror lurked in the snowy expanse. I opened my mouth, but no sound escaped, just the relentless roar of the wind. Then the figure appeared. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. The door slammed shut. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The booth felt like a coffin now, the air thick with an unseen presence that squeezed the life from me. I leaned against the door, heart hammering, watching the frosty breath hang in the air as the shadows danced just beyond the glass. Each breath propelled more icy terror deep into my bones. The noises outside grew more distinct, a whispering, a dragging sound evoking memories of the stories I had dismissed as mere local lore. Every winter, the locals spun tales of the night watchers. They claimed these spirits, drawn by the howling winds, devoured the souls of those who strayed too far from the warmth of their homes, snatching them into eternal darkness. I had never given them credence until the chilling call of my name tore through the wind again. This time clearer, more urgent, Evan. I could feel my blood run cold, the familiar timbre of my mother's voice echoing in the frigid air. Panic surged, clawing at my resolve. I pressed my palms against the window to steady myself, the cold seeping through my layers of clothing, gnawing at my flesh. Outside, the snow shifted unnaturally, an undulating blanket that felt almost sentient, pulsating under the shadow of the trees like a living thing. But a faint glow caught my eye. In the distance, near the edge of the forest, an ethereal light flickered. It was a pale blue, barely illuminating the surrounding trees, casting elongated shadows that twisted and writhed in ways that defied reason. My breath hitched at the edges of sensation, pushing me toward the door. What if it was a lost traveler? What if it was help? At that moment, the radio crackled to life, a voice breaking through the static, a frantic transmission riddled with fear. Don't go outside. They're no longer human. They want to take you. The distress in that voice ignited a primal fear within me. I stumbled back from the door, smacking against the booth wall as the realization hit me. I was not alone, nor was I safe. The light flickered again, more insistently this time. Something was moving within its shapes, twisting, contorting, weaving in and out of visibility. I couldn't look away, ensnared by the strangely hypnotic glow. My world narrowed to that fading ember of hope amidst the oncoming horrors. Suddenly, the wind ceased its howling, plunging the night into a suffocating silence. It was too quiet, too still. The quiet was a predator, waiting for me to make the smallest sound, the slightest movement. I strained to listen, and that's when I heard it again. The scratching had returned, not just outside, but now inside the very walls of the toll booth. A soft, persistent scraping, like fingernails tracing along the booth's darkened edges, that I felt the walls tremble, vibrating with a presence gathering strength. The temperature plummeted further, my breath visible again in small clouds of desperation as I moved deeper into the farthest corner, my heart pounding in my ears. A deep creaking sound erupted from the structure, and I could almost hear whispers forming words just beyond comprehension, dark promises laced with cruelty. Then, with a deafening crash that shattered the silence, the booth windows imploded. Shards of glass sprayed into the air, glinting like stars in the moonlight, and with that, the veil was lifted. A figure materialized, woven from shadows, eyes black as coal and glimmering with a malevolent hunger, mouth curving into an impossible grin that stretched too wide for its face. That I staggered back, holding my hands out as if they could shield me from this nightmare. Somewhere deep inside, a spark of defiance flared, but just as quickly, it was extinguished by the dread that swelled, filling my lungs. The shadows draped around the specter reached toward me like fingers eager to pull me into the abyss. "Join us, Evan," it breathed, voice a low hiss, threading through my mind like poison. I turned and ran toward the remains of the door, the weight of despair crashing down, and as I made it outside, prepared to face whatever lay in wait in the snow, my foot sank into a hollow, a perfect imprint of my own. Boot that I glanced down and gasped as the tracks morphed, weaving into a trail leading back toward the woods, countless sets of footprints entangled in the drifts, all converging on the blue light still flickering at the tree-lined as I stood paralyzed by the revelation. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony, each voice indistinguishable yet familiar, calling out my name. Despair gnawed at my mind, urging me to flee or to succumb to the grip of those lost souls long before me. But as the shadows flared alive with energy around me, I realized the choice would not remain mine for long. Before I could bolt, the ground beneath my feet gave way, and the darkness surged up, swallowing me whole. Adrenaline surged, but the frigid tendrils of fear wrapped around my heart, squeezing tighter and tighter as I felt my body fall through the snow. I hit the earth with a thud that echoed in the silence, darkness closing in, and in that cold expanse, I heard the light beckon again, "Evan." I hit the earth with a thud that echoed in the silence, darkness closing in, and in that cold expanse, I heard the light beckon again, "Evan." The voice drifted like smoke, curling through my mind, dissolving into memory and longing. It wrapped around my consciousness, urging me to stand, to seek out the source of that ethereal glow. But every ounce of instinct screamed at me to run, to escape this foreboding wilderness that seemed to breathe heavily as it enveloped me in its icy grip. The darkness pulsed, its heartbeat synchronized with my own frantic thrum. I pushed myself up from the snowy depths, anxiety clawing at my throat. Around me, the night felt alive, the trees now twisting in grotesque forms, their gnarled branches reaching out as though they were tangled fingers yearning for something or someone. I took a moment to gather my bearings, my breath clouding in front of me even as the chill clung to my skin. Panic rose as I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet. The shadows had not merely followed me. They were alive and eagerly circled the periphery, whispering secrets into the taut silence. "Join us." Evan, the words slithered through the air, sinking into my bones. The allure of being welcomed, embraced by those who once walked this earth, tugged at something deep inside me, igniting a powerful sense of yearning. But who were they? Were they the night watchers? Or were they the souls taken before me, cursed to wander in endless torment? Shadows cast by memories reached out, blurring the line between my past and this malevolent presence that I fought the waves of despair threatening to drown me, forcing myself to my feet, ready to confront whatever lay lurking behind the flickering light. The path stretched ahead, glistening like a beacon of hope, the blue light a promising escape from this insidious fate. Taking a deep breath, I pressed forward, each step fraught with trepidation and the chill of the hidden eyes tracking my every move. As I approached the edge of the woods, the trees loomed above me, whispering secrets I could not grasp. I sensed a shift in the air, the balance of something amiss, as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for me to discover the true nature of the light that pulsated before me. That I stepped into the clearing, my heart racing with each stride, and there it was. A figure stood bathed in the luminescence, face obscured but radiating an alluring warmth that beckoned me closer. A profound yearning surged within, a desire that felt strangely familiar and horrible all at once. "Evan, come closer," it coaxed, the voice lush with a sweetness that felt like poison on my tongue. "I've been waiting for you." The figure began to shift, coalescing into something more tangible. The moment I recognized those stark, radiant eyes, the unwelcome memories rushed back. My mother's spirit, lost but aching to reach out across the veil, tears on her cheeks, pleading with me to come home. It hung heavy around me, the iron scent of loss, the sweetness of longing, the promise of safety. "Mom," I whispered, the name a fragile lifeline I grasped with trembling fingers. But as I took a step forward, the shadows slinked closer, and they hardened into shapes, twisted faces bearing the markings of anguish, mouths agape in silent screams. They watched with hollow eyes, and suddenly, the illusion shattered. No. The voice warped into a cacophony of screams, echoes of my mother's warm tones splintering against the ghostly horror surrounding me. "You're not safe. They'll take you from us. Don't trust them." I stumbled back, losing my footing in the loose snow, as my surroundings twisted and warped into chaos before me. The luminous figure splintered into a crowd of lost souls, ragged whispers merging into a tide of desperate pleas, each face once familiar now grotesque, and desperate, a distortion of love turned to longing and hunger. The ground rattled beneath me, and the shadows seized me, their coldness digging in like talons meant to tear my soul from its flesh. I felt their presence ignite a visceral chill, burying deep within my chest. The same hollow ache that consumed each face now merging into one feral, anguished howl. That I tried to run, but the darkness tugged at my limbs, freezing them in place, forcing me to confront the inexorable truth. They wanted me to join their wretched choir. They desired to feed off my fear and anguish until there was nothing left of me but an empty vessel, another lost soul swirling in the storm. "Join us, Evan." They beckoned again, fingers reaching out toward me, metallic laughter ringing through the night, harmonizing with the incessant whispers. But then, through that cacophony, a familiar throat caught in a moment's cry rose above the rest, slicing through the symphony of horror. "Evan." In the backdrop of all the dissonance, that voice materialized like a knife, and suddenly everything snapped painfully into focus. In a final surge of instinct, I broke free from the shadow's grasp, spinning on my heel and plunging into the undulating darkness, running for my life back toward the lights of the booth where it all began. But as I bolted, something seized my ankle, dragging me back into the depths. Desperation surged, but before I could scream, the whispering became a roar, and the darkness engulfed me completely. The last thing I felt was that warmth fading, swallowed whole by the void. The haunting voice echoed within the dark. "You cannot escape your fate, Evan." And then silence. The silence wrapped around me like a shroud, a suffocating blanket that pulled tighter with every heartbeat. My mind swirled in anguish. The icy grip of despair clawed at the edges of my consciousness. But then, it was filled with the distant thrumming of a heartbeat that was not my own. A cold realization struck me. I had not been abandoned. I was still in their grasp. Fingers of shadow uncurled from the dark recesses, trailing along my skin, chilling my very core. I twisted and struggled, but my limbs felt insubstantial and heavy, as if they were submerged in a pit of ice. It was a struggle for life and an unrepentant clamor for the memories I longed to escape. They beckoned with insidious whispers, serenading me like a beautiful nightmare. "Evan, don't you want to join us?" The question echoed in the silence, echoing my deepest fear, the fear that I was irrevocably bound to this wretched place. Images flickered past my eyes, faces risen from the grave, familiar yet alien, twisting in agony or ecstasy as they languished in this purgatory. A giggle broke through the despair, a child's voice lilting sweetly, but it was tainted with metallic sorrow, a harbinger of the innocence lost to the void. Run, Evan, before they come for you. The urgency pierced through the numbing haze. The darkness trembled, sinister laughter oozing with malice at the corners of my mind. My heart thundered as I pulled from the shadow's grip with every ounce of strength I could muster. Each ragged breath tasted of decay, but it fueled me as I forcefully pushed against the nothingness, feeling the revenant's grasp falter, and then I stumbled into an old, familiar scene, the toll booth. Its lights flickered like a heartbeat, casting ghostly rays through the tangled branches overhead. I blinked, hope surging as memories surged unbidden. 2 years of dull nights ticking away in solitude as snow fell like innocent shrouds. And yet now it felt like a sanctuary, a crumbling fortress repelling the phantoms closing in. The key slid roughly into place in the lock, trembling against the chill, but as I turned it, a chilling realization gripped my heart. Part of me longed to step back into the chaos outside, the desire to face the specters, to understand, to fight back against the unseen terror. I opened the door to the toll booth. The dim light illuminated dust particles floating, each one a tiny reminder of lives lost to the whispers outside, each a memory of the soul's wandering, unseen yet palpably present. Inside, the atmosphere thickened as scrutiny surrounded me, gravity echoing darker memories, all the lives that had passed through, the lost, the forgotten. The toll booth was not the haven I sought. It had become a conduit for predation, a gateway for their whispers woven into the very fabric of the walls. I stumbled back, my foot striking against a frame that felt solid yet ethereal, a ripple of cold descending upon me. The wall pulsed with shadows, flowing like liquid night, and I could almost see the faces, but they were only flashes, a kaleidoscope of desperate obfuscation twisting blurs into focus. That a voice broke through the hoarse silence once again, laced with a chillingly familiar reverberation. It's too late, Evan. You invited them, and the very room grew darker, the shadows swelling like a waking nightmare. I gripped the desk for support, feeling the splintering wood beneath my palms, realizing it was not just the toll booth, it was a beacon, an emblem of my entrapment. Voices erupted all at once in a clamor, a cacophony of accusations tossed like blades that cut deep into my resolve. You don't belong here. You don't know what you've done. You will join us, Evan. Fingers brushed my back cold as death, pulling me toward the doorway. A deep-seated compulsion rushed through my veins. It was an urge to flee, but also to give in, to embrace the looming certainty of despair. I lost myself in their chaotic whispers. The door swung shut with an otherworldly bang, the impact reverberating through the bones of the booth, and a chilling realization dawned. The toll booth was not merely a shelter. It was a prison, a crossroads where souls conspired and congealed. And just as the shadows lunged toward me with gnarled talons of despair, a grinding noise erupted from behind the booth, and the walls began to tremble again. The unmistakable sound of laughter rose from the depths, hungry and feverish, sizing me up, retreating before striking with unholy glee. That I spun around, adrenaline surging through my veins, as the door I thought sealed swung open again. A figure emerged, cloaked in the same luminous blue light I had followed into the woods, their body shimmering with the essence of hope despite the chaos. But as they stepped into the light, their face came into view, a face I recognized too well, yet it twisted and contorted with a horror that churned every stilled heart inside me. Evan, it whispered, eyes wide, you shouldn't have come back. And as the shadows lunged with ravenous screams, I felt the sensation of my heart freezing, the dawn of a truth worse than the shadows I had run from. The figure was not only familiar, it was me, twisted and lost in the dance of a fate I had tried desperately to evade. At that moment, realization struck harder than any blow from the shadows. I was trapped, caught in an endless loop of my own making, where the true horror laid beyond the toll booth. It was me. And then, with the rush of compressed air, the world exploded around me, throwing me back into the void from where I had come, as the darkness swallowed not just my breath, but my very essence. The last echo of a haunting laugh swallowed the light, and I braced myself for what lay ahead, but deep down, I knew there was no escaping now. The toll booth would always call me back home. The air was sharp with cold, yet it felt stifling as I was hurled back into the engulfing void, falling through layers of ice that glimmered like shards of glass in a relentless storm. I hit the ground hard, a bone-rattling jolt that resonated through my back, yet the moment of impact barely registered. I was adrift in a swirling blackness, disoriented and fearful of the unseen, but every fiber of my being screamed that moments ago, nothing was truly done. The landscape around me transformed, as if sculpted from a living nightmare. The white ground shifted into a draping fog that hung like a suffocating cloak, swirling at my feet, consuming the last vestiges of warmth from my flesh. I pushed upward, gasping for breath, only to realize the air had turned foul, a rank odor that curled around my throat like a vine. A distant sound of shrieking echoed through the darkness, and it was joined by a bone-chilling, rattling chorus, children's laughter interspersed with sobs, creating a discordant symphony of joy and despair. I struggled to cover my ears, but a strange compulsion pulled me towards it. With each step, the murmur of phantom voices crept closer, wrapping around me, whispering secrets that twisted inside my skull, igniting a sense of urgency and dread. "Evan, they're waiting for you," a soft, breathy voice chimed, caressing my name like an unsettling lullaby. I hesitated in response, fear clawing at my insides while the voices stabbed at my memories. I had left them, all of them, behind. The memories churned, wrenching up shadows I dared not acknowledge. Through the fog, shapes began to form, figures emerged, wretched and distorted, faces shifting under ghostly light. They roamed in circles like lost souls, their mouths moving but no sound escaping, their eyes hollow yet pleading. A shiver coursed through me. These were the faces I had seen in the toll booth, the spirits chained to the air, thick with sorrow forgotten, abandoned to an endless winter. One figure broke free from the mass, staggering towards me, limbs jerking uncontrollably. As it drew near, desperation etched across its features. I recognized a twisted semblance of my father. But his visage was altered, ravaged by pain and a longing that radiated like heat from a fire. "Evan," he rasped, voice a mere ghost of its former self, "you have to stop this." He extended a hand, trembling under the weight of his sorrow. But the essence of him, that once strong, vibrant man, glowed sickly beneath the frost of his fate. I found myself paralyzed, torn between the monstrous realization that I was somehow involved in this suffering and the instinct to run from him. "Please, save us before it's too late," he pleaded, eyes glistening with tears that seemed to freeze mid-path, crystallizing like curses above his hollow cheeks. It struck me then the warmth of his love, once a fortress against the abyss, now felt like thin parchment, easily sliced through by the icy winds swirling around us. "Don't look back," came the echo of the child's laughter again, but it was swallowed by a new scream, a contrived howl that cascaded through the fog, distorted and menacing. The spirits around me began to writhe. The despairing wails crescendoed into a shriek that pierced through my soul. That I turned to run, sprinting through the fog, the whispers now desperate cries urging me to flee. Yet every corner I took seemed to reshape the maze of shadows. Echoes of laughter morphed into sinister pleas. The boundaries between blockers melded, and I was not just running from the past, I was being pursued by it. The air was alive with a static charge, and I felt the unsettling crackle along my spine as shadows twisted after me, tendril-like fingers caressing my shoulders, urging me back. My breath came in ragged gasps against the newfound growing realization that fleeing would not free me. It would only prolong the torment. Each fearful glance showed me fleeting glimpses of the open toll booth, glimmers of familiarity that betrayed me with their dark undertones. I stumbled back towards the booth, the laughter crescendoed into a manic symphony, a horrible beckoning that wanted me to embrace the depth of this rhythmic horror. I could feel each face lost to the void calling through the darkness, begging for release, demanding that I acknowledge the guilt I had buried below. Then, As the toll booth door came into full view, it swung open, illuminated by a flicker of pale light, revealing a collation of those same twisted faces before me, each pushing forward, reaching for me, clawing at the air that separated us. Their mouths moved as one, the sound melding into one final, echoing chorus. Join us, Evan. The toll booth glowed now, not as a refuge, but as a corruption of gleaming ice, a beckoning circle of truth revealing all horrors hidden. I felt the grip of terror clamping tighter as the shadows surged forward, and as I braced myself against the door frame, the unmistakable voice of my father erupted across the chaos, cutting through the mist. You don't have to do this, Evan. But at that moment, the ground beneath me trembled with icy rage, and I began to sink. The floor warped as the shadows closed in, coiling around my ankles, pulling me into the darkness. With a last surge of strength, I attempted to resist, but the booth transformed into a maw, dragging me down with sacrificial fervor. I locked eyes with the figure of myself contorted, but not lost a reflection of what I was destined to become. As the tendrils dragged me, the last sound to reach my ears was a violent roar. And then, darkness enveloped me, and I felt my heart cease. Everything I had been, everything I could be, crushed beneath the weight of despair. But before total silence could claim me, I opened my eyes one last time, engulfed in shadows, and witnessed the toll booth begin to vanish. A twisted smile etched across its structure, revealing wisps of laughter tainted by malice. That I was alone, and I was not alone. And the toll booth remained, hidden within the fog, waiting for another visitor. And somewhere in the dark, a child giggled softly, urging me to join the unforgiving and stark reality that awaited. The earth was still, but I could feel its tremors beneath my feet, pulsing like a heartbeat that echoed through the encroaching fog. I was no longer in the toll booth, yet its presence loomed heavy in the air, a malignant specter that refused to let me go. I had lost all sense of time. Minutes felt like hours in this frozen purgatory, and the rancid air clung to me like a second skin. As I stood there, caught between dimensions, the fog began to swirl more violently. I sensed something approaching, an ancient dread creeping closer, as inevitable as the tide. Whispered secrets slithered around my ears, but I could not capture their meaning, only feel the chill vibrating within me. The winter wind howled like a tortured soul, and in that moment, I realized it wasn't just the cold that sent shivers down my spine. It was the anticipation of what lay before me. In the ghostly dimness, the landscape contorted again, and before my eyes, grotesque replicas of the toll booth materialized, a dozen twisted visions of the very place where I had surrendered my humanity. But these versions dripped with malevolence, jagged edges and blood-red light, throbbing like a heartbeat of some dark creature submerged beneath the ice. I was standing on a precipice between worlds, a gateway to sorrow and despair where lost souls lingered, trapped between what was and what could never be. Then, I heard it again, the gleeful laughter of a child intermingled with sobs that resonated in the hallowed ground, rising and falling like waves crashing on the beach of my sanity. My heart raced as I strained to see through the thick fog, and from the swirling mass of shadows emerged silhouettes of children, their forms incomplete, flickering like fading candle flames. Please, they chirped in unison, echoing innocence twisted by anguish. Can you help us? We just want to play. Their vacant eyes, though wide with longing, bore into me with a depth of sorrow I had never known. They danced around me, unsteady, their movements a chaotic imitation of joy. I wanted to scream, to shout them away, but something restrained me, an unbearable weight, anchoring me to the spot. I felt the icy tendrils of their presence snaking around my wrists, tugging, pulling towards the unholy booth. Join us, Evan, one of them sang sweetly, the insidious undertone betraying their facade. I could see remnants of lost joy trapped within their spectral forms, a window into what they once had been before the hollow place claimed them. But a low rumble resonated from the depths of the fog as another figure emerged. It was a woman cloaked in darkness, her face hidden beneath strands of long, black hair. Possessing a spectral elegance, she glided towards me, her fingers stretching out, beckoning me with a promise wrapped in danger. Save them, she intoned, her voice melodic yet harsh. a cruel dichotomy pulling at the frayed edges of my sanity. But to do so, you must pay the toll. There is no escape from the choices you have made. An icy breath swept through the air, carrying with it fragments of the past. Echoes of laughter danced with the sounds of hysteria. The realization struck me like a blow. They were forming a group, a swirling current of lost hopes and fading dreams, drawing closer, chanting and urging me to join. In that frozen moment of desperation, I understood. These children represented every soul consumed by regret, every life weighted by guilt. I was not just a witness. I was an unwilling participant, tethered irrevocably to their tragedy. The fog twisted around me, and I was engulfed by their cries. No, you need to let me go. I shouted against the cacophony of their voices, but my words disintegrated against the wall of grim anticipation. The graceful woman, now closer, raised her arms ever so slightly, and with a wicked smile that shattered any illusion of warmth, she began to chant a word I had heard before, a name that chilled my core. Evan, Evan, Evan. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, the laughter transformed into howls, rising to a deafening clamor. The children melded into one terrifying shape, a grotesque amalgamation of pain, confusion, and ferocity. A beast formed from lost innocence. It lunged towards me, its eyes dark voids harboring the anguish of countless souls. That I stumbled back, the ground erupting beneath me like splintered ice. And just as I began to fall, a blinding light burst forth from where the toll booth once stood. It enveloped me, and within it, the echoes of my father's voice rang out, louder and clearer than before. Don't let them claim you. Fight back. But the beast's ghastly howl drowned his words. It was a call to arms, to lose myself in the shadows or embrace the agony of the lost. My will hung by a thread, clinging desperately to the promise of salvation, yet terrified by the depths of the darkness yawning before me. And in that overwhelming moment, as the light faded into the sweet temptation of surrender, my eyes widened in horror. The skeletal hands of the beast lunged for me, fangs bared, ready to consume all that I was. In a flash of terror, I hit the ground hard again. The connection severed as the laughter morphed into excruciating screams of despair and darkness. The abyss awaited, poised to swallow me whole. But as everything blurred into oblivion, I made one desperate decision. That I lunged towards the light, grasping for whatever shred of hope remained, but it flickered just beyond reach. I felt the icy breath of the children at my back, their promise of eternal play weighing heavier than chains. And then, the world twisted again, and the last thing I heard was the thunderous crack of ice splintering beneath us, the shadows laughing even as I fell, lost in horror, into the depths of a darkness that offered no return. The darkness wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud, thick as the fog that had ensnared my senses. I fell through endless shadows, spiraling into a void that seemed to stretch beyond time itself. Cries of the children echoed through the layers of my descent, their laughter now replaced by the tormented wails of the damned. Each scream felt like a shard of ice stabbing into my mind, relentless and sharp, raking memories I was desperate to forget. Just as the last remnants of light began to dissipate, I landed on cold, hard earth that sent waves of pain coursing through my body. I struggled to regain my footing, a sense of nausea swirling within me. I stood in a landscape bizarrely distorted, skyless and airless. The rocky terrain a patchwork of frozen earth scattered with remnants of old, rotting toll booths, their paint peeling like the skin of long-dead lives. Stretched shadows writhed in the corners of my vision, whispering secrets of a fate worse than death. That I stumbled forward, dread pooling in my gut, the ground quaking beneath my feet. Each step echoed like the heartbeat of a slumbering beast. The air was thick with a heady scent, part decay, part something sweet and cloying, like the sugar of childhood spun into a sinister confection. I could sense it all around me, an unrelenting presence watching, waiting, eager to consume. The vision of the specter reappeared, her silhouette permanently etched in my mind. "You cannot escape what you have awakened," she had said. I thought of her and the damned children. Each a fragment of a nightmare lay hidden in the recesses of my soul. They were no longer mere apparitions. They were harbingers of something greater, something lurking behind me. As I turned, I faced the horizon darkening, An unsettling storm brewed, swirling shadows at its core. Focusing on the unholy charade, I felt drawn forward, helpless as tendrils of ice crept up my legs, each inch a reminder of my impending doom. The air grew colder, frigid fingers creeping into my bones, and above me, the clouds began to twist and churn. Light erupted in jagged bolts that illuminated the landscape in unsettling flashes. Each bolt revealed grotesque, misshapen figures blending into the horror, shrouding me deformed hybrids of the lost children I had encountered before, their lifeless eyes now glowing with a hellish radiance. They lingered at the edges of the illuminating light, coaxing me with whispers of eternal play, a sinister alley of memories lodged within my mind. "Don't they deserve to be free?" one of them crooned. It was the voice of the child who had once laughed, the wrongness of it curling my spine. "Help them. Join us." Their voices melded, sweetened and twisted, a cacophony of despair feeding off my fear, a melody meant to ensnare the lost and broken. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, rippling like water, and from within the storm's heart, a dark figure emerged. This one was not childlike, but a towering silhouette, grotesque and featureless, cloaked entirely in swirling darkness. It raised an arm draped in blackness, beckoning me as the children fell silent, stepping aside almost reverently, their eyes filled with an otherworldly reverence. "Evan," came a whisper, deep and resonant, resonating from the very core of the ground beneath me. The name rolled off the being's tongue like an intimate, forbidden secret. "You've borne witness, and now, it is your turn to choose." The words hung heavy in the air, pregnant with insidious possibility. A choice? What choice could I possibly make in a realm where every instinct screamed to flee? Before I could respond, each child's face twisted into a mask of anguish, silently pleading for release, shadows pooling around their feet. The dark figure bobbed closer, the ground trembling more violently now. I couldn't understand, couldn't comprehend the full gravity of the junction at which I found myself. The weight of their suffering bore down on me like a shroud of ice. "Choose," the entity urged again, its voice a grating whisper cutting through my thoughts. "You can reclaim the lost. You can bring them salvation, or you can join their ranks and be part of their eternal torment." Flickers of the toll booth appeared in my mind, the echo of my father's voice, the weight of decisions lost, places I'd been too weak to alter. I fought back the tears threatening to spill over, clenching my jaw to suppress the sobs that echoed down the hall of my conscience. But just as I began to understand the price, the words of the woman emerged from the darker recesses of memory, twisting and taunting. "There is no escape from the choices you have made." Impulses tore at me, tugging me in multiple directions. I was pulled closer to the edge of comprehension when the entity unhinged its mouth, revealing a gaping maw lined with serrated teeth, where the shadows writhed like snakes ready to devour I. In that moment, that very instant, reality splintered again, and I felt a violent shift beneath my feet. Suddenly the land shifted, and the screams erupted anew, this time a cacophony of anguish that drowned out even the sound of the storm. As I stumbled, the ground beneath me fell away, revealing a yawning abyss, shadows clawing their way toward me, talons made of smoke and sorrow. The hunger emanating from the maw of the dark figure echoed in my bones, the sweet, sickly scent of the lost intertwining with the unrelenting wind. "Join us, Evan. You can play." And just as their chorus reached a fever pitch, I glanced over my shoulder to see the writhing storm, now bearing the faces of all those lost to the toll booth, the very same souls I had been urged to save. With terror throwing itself like a tidal wave against every conscious thought, I drew a sharp breath and opened my mouth, prepared to utter a desperate denial, but the abyss entranced me, pulling me further toward its gaping maw. In that moment, the choice was lost to fate. And then, the shadows surged, swallowing my scream as the darkness closed in around me. The reality of my last breath realized as I tumbled into an expanse of terror, into a night that offered no dawn. The darkness clutched at me like cold, unrelenting hands, hands that seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of their own as I spiraled into the void, feeling each fleeting moment stretch into infinity. An agonizing cold enveloped my senses as my consciousness flickered, trapped between worlds and near-infinite pressure weighing heavily on my chest. And again, the wails of the children crawled back into my mind. They were insistent, their cries merging into a chorus of despair that begged for my acknowledgement. The moment I landed, a jarring shudder echoed through my being, and I found myself no longer plummeting but sprawled upon the frigid ground of a place untouched by the warmth of the sun. The terrain twisted around me, a polychromatic nightmare, where colors melted into one another like paints on a canvas that had lost its artist. The remnants of toll booths loomed in the distance, their skeletal frames shrouded in a dense fog that glistened like the skin of a beast long dead, their silhouettes dancing in the twilight of my horror. Sudden movement captured my attention, first in the shadows, then before me. Spectral forms glimmered into view, grotesque puppets manipulated by invisible strings, each bearing the harrowed expressions of those who had once been fresh with life, each one a victim of the toll booth's eternal grip. Their hollow eyes locked onto mine, sending conspiring whispers swirling around me, intertwining with the laughter of my childhood now warped into something dreadfully unrecognizable. With every breath, I perceived their silent pleading. They grew brighter with each passing moment, filling the air with an awful warmth that felt wrong in such an icy realm. "Help us!" they beckoned, 1,000 tiny voices that echoed in my ears. I could sense the layers to their anguish, an urgency so profound that it nearly shattered the barrier of my resolve. The imposing shadow surged once more. It was the illuminative vortex that radiated with ungodly illumination. I felt prickling nerves across my skin, and that bone-deep dread returned. The entity's intention was clear. It thrived on despair, feeding off the hopelessness that radiated from me like a beacon through this endless void. Evan came the whisper yet again, deeper this time, as if drawing power from the very essence of this macabre world. "Face your darkness. You tread on the edge of a precipice, separate the illusion of light from the weight of reality." This strange paradox tore my soul. That voice was achingly familiar. The agonizing realization washed over me. Could it be her? The specter from my dreams? The confusion splintered inside me as I grappled for a sense of agency that felt forever out of reach. And then I saw them this time, not the gnarled faces of sorrow, but the blooming shadows of childhood innocence, the children themselves, eternally caught in a cycle of play. Their laughter echoed once more, fragmented, haunting, drifting into the air alongside the fading cries of the tormented. The pulse within my chest quickened, aligning with the spectral beings, taken by some cosmic force that demanded to be appeased. Suddenly light split the encroaching shadows, fracturing the world around me. I was thrust into a memory, a flickering image of the toll booth, bathed in soft autumn light, the smell of fresh leaves caressing my senses. My father leaned against the frame, laughter bursting from his lips as he held an old rusty coin. But then shadows crept in, tainted joy intertwined with grief, darkness swallowing happiness whole. His smile twisted, became a mask of terror, and the toll booth vibrated with a haunting wail. "Your choices determine your fate, Evan," he shouted, his voice pulled by the winds of despair. "Free them, or perish with me." The vision shattered, flooded by a wave of swirling darkness as dread coiled tighter around my heart. I could barely muster the strength to breathe, the weight of both my past and the chilling responsibility pressing down harder with each flash of light. "Free us. Save us." The children's voices harmonized, blending into a terrifying anthem that echoed against the realm's very structure. "You must choose." I staggered back, the edges of my vision blurring. The figures, the very children I had felt so connected to, seemed to coalesce into a singular, ominous force, as if the toll booth had resurrected a fragment of my own conscience to harness against me. They stood at the threshold, radiating a luminous glow that conflicted with the blackened edges of my reality, each one fiercely reaching for me. "No," I gasped, shaking my head wildly. I can't save you." But as those words escaped my lips, I felt an unbearable tension. The churning night around me began to crack and splinter, and the overwhelming power of the abyss threatened to consume me whole. Then a roar split the cacophony, a deep, guttural growl that resonated through this realm, as if the very fabric of reality was tearing itself apart. The dark figure towered above. It loomed, its skeletal arm reaching, fingers stretching like nightfall itself, leaving trails of shadow that devoured everything in their path. And with one final, deafening crack, the ground beneath me ruptured, and in that auditory explosion of despair, I plummeted once more. This time there was no light, no laughter, just silence, the terrible, isolating silence of unyielding dread. My heart raced, and I opened my mouth to scream. But that scream was stolen by the abyss, swallowed whole as the shadows engulfed me. In the unfathomable depths below, I could hear their cries louder, now, echoing in a symphony that spoke of my greatest fears. I fell toward an infinite void that visibly pulsed and twisted with unspeakable horrors, waiting for the moment I would land upon the dark threshold of their damnation. And just as the gravity pulled me closer to the devouring maw of darkness, a new sound erupted through the ear-piercing silence, one that held the promise of salvation, emerging from the core of that blackness. ASOB.IT was vulnerable. It was familiar, and it was mine. The sob echoed around me, sharp and cutting, mingling with the void's oppressive silence. It rose from a lingering warmth, a flicker of something once cherished, now ensnared by chilling despair. Every part of me recoiled from the sound, yet it resonated deep within, pulling at my very essence. In that moment of despair, with the darkness approaching, the sob transformed, swirling into a chaos of memories both distant and searing. I fell, and it felt as if I were suspended in time, caught in an endless loop of torment and longing. In the flicker of fragments, I saw my childhood home nestled against the frigid mountains, the gentle laughter of friends echoing against the shimmering, dark waters of Lake Nick. Then, just as painfully, the memories twisted and contorted, painting over joy with shades of horror, the toll booth casting its long shadow over my most cherished moments. The familiar warmth spun out of reach, a mirage tangled in an abyss of frozen fear. Somewhere beyond the darkness, I perceived movement, a distorted figure emerging from the gloom, its form grotesquely shifting, as if unsure of its own existence. The sob echoed again, softer this time, tangled with a despair so devastating that it threatened to grip my heart and shatter my resolve. Evan, it called, each whisper like ice against my soul. With sheer desperation, I pushed against the tide of shadows that held me captive, flailing as my senses overwhelmed me. I could almost feel the remnants of their fingers, frigid and sharp, grazing my skin, seeping through the fabric of my soul. I remembered the faces of the children caught forever in laughter, forever pleading, but their eyes had transformed, taking on a haunting glow that mirrored my own anguish. Suddenly, the unmistakable shape of the toll booth materialized through the haze, a dismal monument of my past, its presence as suffocating as the void itself. Closer it crept, tauntingly pulsating with a light that seemed to ebb and flow like the breath of a sleeping beast. "You will join the chorus, Evan," it whispered, the voice malevolent, unfurling like a dark flower in bloom. My heart thundered in reaction, and I pressed onward, seeking an escape that felt increasingly futile. "I refuse," I shouted, words tumbling from lips that felt pale and ghostly. "You cannot have me. Not today." The very fabric of the air quaked, and for a moment, the shadows trembled at my defiance. Around me, other voices joined in, rising from the depths, a cacophony as fierce as my fear. "He belongs to us," hissed a chorus, singing an ancient tune of sorrow that entwined with the sobs. "The toll must be paid." In the seconds I fought against despair, I sensed movement at the edge of the void, a swirl of vapor coiling into something more tangible, less ephemeral. It glistened like the undersurface of ice, reflecting forgotten memories while harboring unknown terrors. My body ached to accept the darkness, to merge with the twisted hopes of those who had ensnared themselves within this hell. And then, it happened. The toll booth split open before me, fissuring in a way that felt both foreboding and expectant, a dark mouth poised to consume or reveal, as if demanding I step forward into the heart of its domain, where secrets whispered of suffering. Among the ghosts behind its spectral threshold stood a visage so hauntingly familiar it rooted my feet to the cold ground. It was Sophia, my younger sister, trapped within the glassy confines of the booth, her mouth moving but soundless, a tragedy woven into her features. She was the sobbing child, the essence of all that I'd lost, a flickering memory tainted by grief and despair. "Evan," she pleaded, her form shimmering like a reflection upon a storm-ridden lake, a beggar of hope against the nightmares that consumed us both. "Help me," but before I could respond, a sharp, slicing sound erupted behind me, like ice splintering under brutal force. The figure from the void had evolved. It towered taller than before, cloaked in shadows, its eyes glowing like twin suns ignited by rage. I felt my heart pound, in sync with that icy roar. I had no more time. "Choose." It howled, a summoning cry sent forth from hell itself, demanding my submission to its wrath. I swung around, ready to face it, but I could feel Sophia's gaze drawing me back, begging me to stay. The darkness yawned wider, and now I stood at the threshold, one foot teetering towards Sophia and the light, the other digging into the black soil beneath, echoing calls from the unknown. Her hand reached for mine, ghostly and trembling, and I felt the warmth of her desperate hope skyrocket against the cold talons of despair all around. "Please, Evan," she begged. "Don't let it take me." An icy breath pulled me in both directions, and before I could comprehend the impossible choice I faced, the world erupted around us, fractured realities colliding, the toll booth looming ever larger, the cries of the lost merging into one continuous wail. And then, with a deafening crack, the ground beneath me quaked violently, sending shockwaves through my body. I felt myself tumbling downwards again, deeper into the void, and Sophia's grip slipped away, her scream echoing in my ears as darkness devoured it whole. That I spiraled back, not knowing if I was returning to her or falling deeper into the depths of an unimaginable hell. A new horror clawed at the edges of my consciousness as I gasped, dread suffocating me. I was losing her, I was losing myself, and in that anguished despair, another sob emerged, disembodied yet familiar. It echoed through the darkness. "Evan." The sound enveloped me like an icy embrace, blooming from the depths of despair. Just when I thought the void would claim my very soul, a grasp reached out. It wasn't solid, but it felt real, suffocating and liberating all at once, wrapping around me and yanking me back toward a reality that felt irreversibly shattered. With each pang of awareness, I felt pieces of myself begin to realign, and dread coiled tighter around my heart. The familiar voices surged again, but now they came from the depths of a memory, echoes of laughter, once joyous, now interweaved with anguished cries. Sophia's voice voiced out through it all, layered with innocent terror. Cracks of impending gloom fissured the air, and I was hurled into a tempest of memories: the toll booth, the flickering light, the darkness encapsulating time and space as it taunted me with what I had lost. Each detail stung like a cold wind, creating a storm of guilt and regret. As the haze faded to reveal again the interminable landscape of ice, I gasped. The toll booth stood once more before me, a beacon of twisted hope amidst a sea of despair. It shimmered, wavering in the shadows like some fanged creature waiting to devour its prey. Its peeling paint and splintered frame bore the stories of every soul caught within its grasp, but I was drawn to it now, unable to turn my back. With sang-froid determination, I stepped forward, the shadows lunging greedily, sinking their cruel hands into my flesh. "Evan!" Their voices cried out, slithering beneath my skin. "Join us! Join us!" But I gritted my teeth, stifling their beckonings within the depths of my mind. I had to make a choice, not between light and dark, but between transcending this curse and succumbing to the abyss. "Not today." The affirmation surged through me, echoing against the light of the booth, illuminating all the forgotten lives I had built of agency. If I were to confront the horror, I would take charge of my fate, not let it consume me. But the burden of the lost weighed heavily on my chest, like frozen chains entwined around my heart, pulling me down into a madness that promised to obliterate my very soul. Pushing the door open, it groaned and howled, revealing the very shadows I grew up fearing, the cries of children merging into a singular, piercing note that resonated through the hallowed ground of despair. Familiar faces peered back at me from the depths, mournful specters with their mouths agape, frozen between earth and purgatory. Then I saw her. Sophia stood amidst them, shimmering like fragile ice, tears trailing down cheeks pink with the threat of frostbite. My heart broke. "Help me, Evan," she pleaded. Those words whipped through the atmosphere, rending apart illusions and demanding that I acknowledge the collective sorrow that had defined my life. "Come back to me," I shouted, reaching out, desperate to bridge the gap between us. "I won't let you go." Her form flickered, wavering beneath the weight of other lost souls that clamored for redemption. Yet I could see my own reflection in her eyes, haunted, angry, yearning. "Don't let them take me. You're my only hope." In that moment, the veil of shadows split further, revealing the terrible truth lingering beyond the booth. A darkness assembled from fears and fantasies alike. It pulsated with fury, roiling closer, a cacophony echoing around me. "Your toll must be paid, Evan." The voice growled, a guttural whisper that cut through my resolve like shards of ice. "Serve this darkness. Bring her to me, and your debt will be forgiven. Or suffer like the lost souls you yearn to save." The decision weighed heavily on me. On one hand, love flickered against the encroaching darkness, while power beckoned with enticing promises, endless silences, and eternal sorrow defined by the wails of the lost. "Choose wisely, Evan," the shadows echoed, morphing into the faces of the children whose torment intertwined with mine. "Your choice doesn't define you. It reveals what you truly fear," I whispered, forcing truth through the choking specter of anguish. And in that moment, clarity soared like a phoenix through the winter night. I wouldn't barter with despair. I would resist. I resisted the urge to succumb, to let go of all I had left. "Sophia," I cried out again, focusing on the faint glow of her essence amidst the chaos. "I'll save you. Just hold on." A brilliant light erupted around us, a warm glow threatening to wash over the darkness as my heart surged. I began to move toward her, fighting through the cold, tendrils pulling at my heels like wailing banshees. Suddenly, there was a surge of brightness. The toll booth vibrated, illuminating the land in a dazzling white light that shattered the night. "You can't escape," the dark figure roared, pain and anger mingling in one voice, dissolving into a cacophony of anguished screams as the warmth flooded over the shadows. But as it collided, I felt the chilling hand of negative reality wrap around my throat, squeezing tighter. The world began to shatter around me, fractures forming unevenly as my resolve cracked beneath the toll of despair. "Join us, Evan," a chorus of twisted souls howled, pulling me back into their murky depths. With an agonizing scream, I threw my heart into the warm light and surged forward, the shackles breaking as the shadows dissolved in a fog of writhing whispers. There she was, finally, melting into my grasp, the warmth of my little sister igniting my veins. "Evan." Her voice rang sweetly, and I felt a warmth bloom in my chest. With a final surge of strength, I crossed the threshold between light and darkness. The surging light expanded rapidly, upturning every shadow, collapsing the world around us as laughter broke through the frost-covered wall. And in that moment where our souls connected, I understood that love was the strongest force, a bond that could snuff out the darkness once and for all. Just as the tyrannical shadows threatened to drag me back, I held Sophia's hand tight, infusing my will into her connection. The toll booth vanished in a blinding explosion, every cataclysmic scream ricocheting into oblivion. The last thing I saw was the malevolent shape of the darkness ripping apart at the seams, an incorporeal visage screaming my name in frustration as hope enveloped us. But then there was silence. I opened my eyes to a numbing cold that was not of the void. We were outside, bathed in gentle moonlight, the toll booth gone and the woods standing silent around us. But Sophia, she glimmered brighter, fuller, with the warmth of the living etched into her delicate features as she turned away from me. "That was unwise, Evan," she whispered, her voice now tainted, her eyes ablaze with a knowing glow. "You'll have to face your fate, brother. You freed me, but the darkness will always come for you." And as she drifted away into the shadow of the trees, I stood frozen, the chill of reality returning. The night was still, eerily silent, but deep within me was a newfound dread. The darkness had been vanquished for now, but as the whispering winds fluttered around me, something lingered, a feeling that this was not the end. Far away, echoing through the emptiness, the laughter began again. Evan, join us.